Are you hooked on hooks already? If not, then let me talk about the effect hook so that'll have a lasting effect on you. In the previous video, we saw the use of the state hook in order to make use of state within a functional component. Let's now talk about the effect hook, and in addition, a couple of other hooks when we modify another class component in the to-do application that we have been working on so far. Going to the to-do application, let's modify the to-do list component, which is also a class component. So to get started, let me first go down to the bottom here and then extract out this export default, delete the rest of the line there, come back up here and then change the class component to a function component, and then change that to a function here. And once we are done that, then we know that we no longer need the constructor for the function component. So I'm going to delete that constructor there. In addition, let me fix up the styles part here, just like we did with the previous component. So we'll say make styles, and then also you will see that we have this constant that we have defined here. I'm going to remove that and then come back up here and then say use styles. And once we are done with that, let's go ahead and fix up a few things in this component. We no longer need the render function, so I'm going to remove that render function and then come back down here and then remove the corresponding closing parenthesis here, and then adjust the indentation of this part of the code here. And once we are done with that, let's update the two handle functions here. So we'll say handle toggle is equal to to-do, because this is receiving a parameter. So that will be the modification that we need to do to this. And then similarly, the handle delete, turn these into arrow functions there. There we go. So the handle toggle and handle delete are completed. And then let's go into the JSX here and then fix this up. So this on click now becomes a direct call to the handle toggle. Similarly, this on click here also becomes a direct call to the handle delete. And then if you scroll down, you'll see one more of this here. These are just some housekeeping that needs to be done in order to turn this into a full-fledged functional component. So once we are done with that, let's go back up and then fix up a couple of things here. So now, once we are done with that, then we realize that we have this map dispatch to props here, which is no longer valid because this is not a class component. So I'm going to delete that. And then we are left with this state, map state to props part. I'm going to replace that now. So to replace that, we are going to import a couple of hooks from React Redux. So we'll say use selector and then use dispatch. You have seen the use of use dispatch already in the previous exercise, so it's exactly the same thing. Now what I'm going to do is here we were taking the Redux state and then extracting the to-dos and mapping it to the to-dos props in the class component here. So we need something to replace this part, and that is where the use selector that we have just imported comes to our help. So in here, in the function, we'll say const to-dos equal to use selector, and this use selector allows me to take the Redux state and then take part of the state and then map it to the to-dos here. So with this, what we have done is to extract the to-dos from the Redux state and then map it into the to-dos within this function so that we can make use of it within the function. In addition, let me use the use dispatch to declare the dispatch there. So this is also necessary. Now, after this, we need to go into the handle toggle and then change this to dispatch, because that is how you're going to be dispatching the actions to the Redux here. So these two need to be replaced with the dispatch here. Now, once we are done, most of the work is completed. We have updated the component into a function component. The one thing that is left over is this part, where we were fetching the to-dos in the component did mount method of our class. What is the equivalent thing to do when we use hooks? Now, this is where the use effect hook comes into the picture. Now, we still need to dispatch the fetch to-dos. Now, but to dispatch the fetch to-dos, we need to do a few things here. Now, this component did mount will no longer work. So this will be replaced by the use effect here. Now, before I use the use effect, let me go ahead and import that. So we'll go up here and then instead of the component, we'll import the use effect here. And once we have imported the use effect, let me come in here and then I'll say use effect. And this will be a function call here. So that's the use effect. So this way we are dispatching the fetch to-dos from the use effect. Now, what does this mean? The use effect is going to be called every time the component is rendered. So every time the component is rendered, you will be fetching the fetch to-dos. But that's not exactly what we want to do. We want to fetch the items only when we really require it. So let me restrict under what circumstances I'm going to fetch here. So we'll say if to-dos equal to null. That is, we don't have all the to-dos fetched yet, or to-dos error message equal to null. You can look up the structure of the to-dos state in the Redux code that is included here to understand how we are defining this. And then also not to-dos loading. So if to-dos is currently loading, if to-dos loading is set to true, then I don't want to dispatch a fetch to-dos because it's already in the loading process. So under these circumstances, I will dispatch the fetch to-dos. In addition, I can specify a condition here. So the dependency list here. So the dependency list specifies. So in the dependency list, I will specify to-dos as the dependency list. What this means is that when we re-render the component, then if the to-dos has not changed from the previous rendering of the component, then this useEffect will not be called. So the useEffect will be called only when there is a change in the to-dos. So this way we will restrict, or this is a performance optimization that we are doing here to ensure that the useEffect is called only in circumstances where it is really required. That is, you will be fetching the to-dos only when you really require it to be fetched here. With this change, let's go ahead and save the changes. So again, what we have done is we have imported the useEffect hook from React. Also, we imported a couple of additional hooks from React Redux, custom hooks, and then made use of them here. The useSelector hooks, which allows me to select part of the state here. The useDispatch hook, which is used for dispatching actions. And then the useEffect hook that we have used here in place of component did mount that we were using in the class component here. So this sort of illustrates to you how you can make use of the useEffect or the effect hook within your component here. So with these changes, let's go ahead and save the changes and have a look at the modified application in the browser. Going to the browser, you see that your application is still running just like before. Let me add one more item. We'll click on a few items as completed. Let me mark them as incomplete and then delete one. And you see that all the to-do functionality is still working exactly the same as before. So with this modification to the to-do list class component and turning it into a functional component using the effect hook, we have managed to demonstrate how we can use two different hooks. In the previous exercise, we saw the use of the state hook. In the current exercise, we saw the use of the effect hook. So this set of exercises hopefully have illustrated to you how you can turn a class component into an equivalent functional component. The use of the state hook and the effect hook pretty much allow you to deal with much of the functionality that is embedded inside a class component. With this, hopefully you have gotten a flavor of how to make use of React hooks. Now, if you have some class components that you already have designed for your React application, why not use these techniques that I've just illustrated to turn them into an equivalent functional component just for an exercise? Now, in the future, if you're designing React applications, maybe a functional component together with hooks will satisfy your need more easily than a class component. If you want to read more details about why hooks have been introduced into React and what are the problems that they are trying to address and so on, you can read more details in the documentation that is behind me, a link to which is provided in the description of this video.